Hey, Ferris. I think we should be live. I don't know if you're able to confirm.
Hey, William.
Hey.
Yeah, I think we're live.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, so pretty much the studio started by the students picking a creature, and we went through a hybridization of that creature to start not abstracting but extracting the aesthetics and create our furniture, our classroom, and then moving forward our school. We're going to start with Dheer, and he's gonna walk you through his project. Okay, Dheer, take it away.
Yes, Virgil. Yeah.
Sorry, Dheer. Sorry, I did not introduce my critics. So we have Marcelyn Gao. Marcelyn Gao, she's coordinator of the design theory and pedagogy at SciArt. She also usually coordinates 2GAX, so you guys would have had the pleasure of having her as your professor this semester. And Marcelyn, do you still teach CS?
Yes, yeah, the history theory class. So I'll be teaching you next semester, everybody who's in here, with John Cooper.
Okay, great. Yes, Marcelyn she was a great mentor and definitely one of the best professors I've had at SciArt. So
thank you.
Thank you, Marcelyn. We have Majeda Alhinai. Majeda, she is my partner in design. We both work on their Brash Collective and many of the projects that you guys have seen that we've done. She's kind of like what controls the craziness that I want to bring out, and she makes sense of it. So she's amazing. Thank you, Majeda, for joining us today. She's also a visiting faculty in Kent State, so she's also teaching a visiting studio over there.
Thank you, William.
All right, okay, Dheer, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Virgil. Should I keep it in full screen or should I continue as it is?
You can put it in full screen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, as we go from the micro to the macro scale, my approach to the design of the chairs and the furniture was to take an ornamental approach. I use these defined shapes and forms of the creature to sculpt the supporting parts of the furniture units. And as we transition from the classroom mass, I use these various shapes of these animals to create these sculptured forms. They create a very dynamic interior space. And when we go from the interior to the exterior, I arrange these classroom, we go from the classroom mass to the classroom cluster. And when I arrange these classroom clusters, I try to resemble them as an allegory for an island cluster. And with that reference in mind, I try to mimic the water ripples on the topography of the ground to further complement with the island cluster idea. Thank you.
Marcelyn and Majeda, do you guys have a link to the Miro board just in case you guys want to go through it on your own.
Yeah. And are we seeing 2 and then discussing, or
No, 1 and then we discussed it.
So, Dheer, thank you for presenting your animation. I had a couple questions. So right now, what we're seeing, these are the first 3 clusters. Each one has 2 classrooms per cluster.
They're actually just one classroom, but the arrangement is an unorthodox arrangement of the desks and chairs in the classroom.
And do you, is there any difference in how you're thinking about the different classrooms?
Yeah, regarding that, as we go from one mass to another, if you observe it, the cluster size proportionately increases slightly. As we're going from kindergarten to primary grade, I try to associate with the scale of the classroom mass also with the, to differentiate each cluster in a way.
Because I mean, I think something that really jumps out that I love about your project is the way you're treating the fenestration. So the windows on, in particular, I'm looking at well, right here where we're seeing in your screen share, the green volume in the lower quadrant, right where your cursor is. That, I mean, there's some pretty amazing moves in terms of how you're working with like the complexity of the surface, and then the way you're thinking about introducing light into those spaces. And I think that could, as the project evolves, that could become like a major sort of theme in terms of thinking about what role does natural lighting play in classrooms? Because often, you know, having taught for many years and in different kinds of spaces, I think that the windows are so important, because the whole issue of how one pays attention to something in a space, but then also if there really is no access to the exterior, it kind of, you know, it's not a very pleasant experience. And so I think that the way in which the windows might actually become a really charged element in your project, like what happens if a window is almost touching the ground? It's very low. Maybe it's not a window that you see out of at eye level, but maybe I guess for small children, I mean, what age is this, like for elementary school?
Kindergarten to 6th grade, I believe.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because like how, as the children grow and they're getting older and you know, their relationship to the way they're using the space might change. So I think that is definitely something in your project that's really, really jumping out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, here I think I agree with Marcelyn. I like the way you're using projection to introduce the window, and I mean this idea of aperture becoming almost like a sticker in a way, and kind of carving into the mass with the same geometry. I like your use of color. The color palette, especially on the interior, appears to be really playful. I'm curious to see how the aesthetics on the interiors change as you move from K through 12 or K to 6th grade, as you put it. Does it become a totally different aesthetic as the children get older, or does it kind of remain the same all the way throughout the school? Your use of texture also on the exterior, how does it eventually either break up and become more about highlighting specific details of the rhino? What animal are you? It looks like a rhino, I'm not sure.
It is a rhinoceros, yes.
Okay. So, yeah, so are there moments where the more bulbous parts take on a different character versus, I mean, would you highlight specific features is what I'm getting at of the rhino, or does it become completely lose you know, its character once it becomes a classroom or a new space? This idea of the island is interesting. I'm curious to see also how you would travel between the classrooms. This whole idea of like elementary school classes being in almost like trailers. I went to an elementary school where it was separate into little trailers. It was in a little town called Claremont in California. But the classrooms were set up in a sense that there's like a bunch of separate buildings around a courtyard with a playground. And does this space in between the classrooms take on a form as well? Or is it about maintaining, I don't know if that's part of your brief, for example, to design the landscape as well. I see that you're doing more of like a bubbly kind of space. So I'm curious to see what the journey between each of these classrooms would be like once you complete the cluster.
Yes.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is really beautiful is the way in which you're working with the furnishing. And so this idea of how furniture, you know, normally there's a kind of standard element to it. So in that interior view where you have the tables, each one seems to be treated a little bit differently depending upon how the animal parts are starting to intersect the plane. And I love that idea that maybe within a learning environment, I mean, it could be that each person has a desk and that's like their desk for the whole semester, but you could also think about maybe it's more like a hot desking situation where you move around and depending like, you know, whenever you show up, you just choose a different desk for that day and that the desk is literally different. It's not just, you know, you're in a different location, but it's like your relationship to that surface and where you place objects on it will change depending upon, you know, your design. So I love the idea that you're really customizing those. I think the same could maybe start to happen with the shelving, like those green shelves. There's an opportunity, maybe some of them are movable items that could be placed differently throughout the semester, but maybe others start to become like sort of embedded into the wall. So you're not really sure like where the wall begins and where you start to encounter shelving. There's a really beautiful discussion about furnishing in this book, Queer Phenomenology by Sarah Ahmed. And she writes really beautifully about the difference between the word furniture, which is sort of like this maybe inert object that we can move, but she spins it and talks about furnishing, like how do we place things in a space and what that might mean, like how do we place our bodies in the space, and the idea of sort of making oneself at home through that act of furnishing. And so I think in considering a learning environment for young children, that's also an amazing thing to think about. Like how do you create a sense of kind of home or comfort, or some of these issues that Florencia brought up at the beginning, that the idea that the room in classroom now is different. There might be hybrid learning scenarios. I mean, have you thought about that at all? Like, would students potentially be using this? Would it be like a normal way that we used to use classrooms before this pandemic? Or might it be something where, you know, they're coming in certain days of the week and then other times they have a remote relationship to these spaces?
Okay. As you had asked about the arrangements from the lower to higher grade, I've just pointed to one of the renders just to show how the arrangements vary from this from the smaller scale to the slightly larger scale. So the thing what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take advantage of the shape I try to generate with the rhinoceros. And I try to create these pocket corners where, okay, we can have more closer activities where, you know, you don't have to have the whole class in one area. We can split them up into small parts and also have different activities in other areas of the classroom. There's no corner, so I was going to say corner, but there's no corner in the building. Yeah, so yeah, I try to create this informality, but I also try to show an example of a formality in this space. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, definitely those are great comments. I just have a question for you, for Majeda and Marcelyn, because, you know, when we talked about organization, usually the students, they tended to organize or think about clusters of classrooms in this manner, where they are just kind of like just laying them in a, or what we can, you know, visually perceive as if it was like a grouping in a cluster. So in what other ideas do you guys think they can start utilizing as we move forward with the rest of the classroom? Because imagine, like, if this just keeps growing, you know, exponentially like that, then it's not like we're gonna run out of space. So, you know, so I just, you know, want to pick your brains and see if these guys get some feedback on that.
Well, I think something Majeda brought up about the connection between them and how you might get from one to another. It could be, especially, you know, because this is California, so a lot of the year we can be outside, and especially thinking about now, like that image that on the front of the brief where the classroom is on the ferry, you could imagine maybe like breakout spaces where parts of your sort of volumes of these rooms, the classrooms, parts of the walls, maybe, I mean, I see that you have doors and things, but maybe there are sort of larger pieces that can slide open. And then the landscape is maybe designed to become an extension of that classroom. So the idea of the shift between floor plate and then this undulating surface that you're showing, this sort of black undulating surface, maybe those things can engage, like the way that you're working with the desks. I would start to deploy some of those moves on the scale with how that landscape starts to interact with spaces that could be programmed as outdoor learning. So it could extend that way as well. You could have like different times of the year when the campus almost doubles its size.
Yeah, I would agree with what Marcelyn's saying. I wonder what this would look like if it went up vertically as well, maybe just one like floor above. I don't know, I'm more inclined to see this grow outwards with the in-between spaces. As Marcelyn was saying, all kids need outdoor time. Like I remember as a kid, I was waiting for that time that I could go outdoors. I would rather spend my break outdoors than indoors. There wasn't really, I mean, sometimes in schools also you're not allowed to stay inside of the building during break time. So I don't assume that there would be maybe a sheltered space, but it could be a mixture of both. I don't know if the journey should be vertical, but as you said, you run out of space at some point. So it could be one way of avoiding, you know, the landscape is growing horizontally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for the comments. Dheer, great job during the semester. Thank you for being able to push this far and, you know, get to this stage. And as the critic mentioned, you know, it's just gonna keep building up, and you know, we got to get to that classroom, and we have to think about those in between spaces, and not just for you, but it seems like you know, as a class, we all kind of like took that approach of clustering in this manner. And, you know, throughout the reviews, I'm just going to be asking questions to my critics in regards to how can, you know, they help us change in the way in which we progress. But overall, Dheer, very happy with the work, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, great. So now we have Lilith.
Okay, hi, I will share my screen. Okay, my internet is not that good, so maybe I will play the videos on my computer.
Yes.
Can you guys hear the sound?
No.
So what can I do? Sorry, I can't hear you.
You don't want to try to play the Vimeo?
No. There is sound in the videos, but you guys can't hear it.
No, I couldn't hear.
Mm.
Maybe try to play the Vimeo and let's see what that looks like.
I just worried if, yeah, my internet is not perfect. Can you hear the voice now?
No.
Never mind, I will just play it without sound.
Okay, I can also just play it for you. Okay, if you let me share.
Okay, thank you.
Then you take control over the.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Give me 1 second. Oh, I might not be able to because I'm streaming and it's gonna be super slow. Sorry, Ren.
When you share screen, you have to select in the window, share computer audio, and that should allow you to play the sound as well.
Let me try that.
Gonna be in the.
Yeah, I see. Let me try this. Can you hear this time? Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, that's for the videos, and I will show you some images and have a bit introductions of my project. Yeah, my project is called the Unscribbled Monotony, and despite of the shared modeling, you can hear me, okay. I also inspired by the concept of 7 layers visible from hands of light, which demonstrates how a body can be seen more than obvious single individuals, but 7 layers of auras with actual images. And each layer share different characteristics, but for instance, there are twisted lines and some are filled with volumes, but they still interconnect with each other since they are rooted in the same origins, the bodies. The similar ideas can be adopted in my formations of classroom phones to unscramble the monotony of a single object. The given object for my project is a panther, and it begins to eat up conventional furniture with its morphological characteristics. The small pieces from the object deconstructed and reconstructed into various forms. From the back of a chair to the lower part of the table, they climb and diffuse in the solid forms throughout the classrooms. From a male glance, the classroom still remains in its normal organizations, but if we really observe, everything is more than its conventional form. The furniture take on massive details of organic morph, as well as the edge of the floor and the surrounding walls. All the elements composing the classroom create a dynamic environment where each object equals to each other and add to the multiple layers of the space quality. The world is the same, but what differs is how individuals perceive it. So therefore, the project intended to educate children to see beyond the monotony of the superficial layer of the world. The relative constrained organizations of the classrooms ensures the daily activities of a kindergarten, while the details of the interior maximize the individual imaginations of children. Zooming out of the interior, the formation of each classroom follows the same methodologies as well. Similar to the variation of the body layers, the volumes of the classroom take on slightly different characters, and each of them hold different stories inside, which means like for the different educational purpose. The variations of materialities and abundant use of colors aims to stimulate children's senses and to maximize their imaginations through complexity. Despite of the differences between those separate classrooms, there are pieces of similarities for flows among them, keeping a continuous rhythms and indicating the fact that together they compose an integrated narrative. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful project. You know, these the fun thing about playing with creatures as your starting form is these clusters really just look like toys sprawled out on the floor, just as kids would play, and that's what makes them so playful and also like endearing to look at. I love your use of materiality and color, and it's really working with the forms that you're producing and also the way that you're highlighting specific details with the very thin filigree sort of framing specific elements. Very well done. The video itself, I'm sure you'll discuss this with your professor as you start to refine things for your final. I felt like there was moments where there's a bit too much theatrics, like I wanted to enjoy parts of what you were showing, but I mean, you have your still images and I can really take them in. I don't know if your final deliverable is to have both and then we could still look at the details that you're creating. I like the use of sound to kind of highlight specific childlike noises. But also what I noticed most about your form is your use of space and how you're not just creating table setups, but also kind of in between spaces for children to play. And I saw, maybe there was an image in your presentation that I can't see here. It was like with the orange seating setup. I can't see it in your renders on the mural board, but that was a nice space that you're starting to create with just, you know, simple toys and primitives and really creating more than just a classroom. The other thing that I noticed in your presentation, I mean, I don't know if it's relevant or not, but when you were talking about the body and like this idea of like astral body, I almost imagine this as your way of calling into the classroom on remote days to be like astral projection, and you get to like enjoy the space virtually in a way. Obviously, you know, this is mythical, but I think it's a fun idea to be there without physically being there. So that was a really nice sort of fantasy, I think.
I think it's really beautiful. I totally agree with Majeda's comments about the color color palettes are fascinating. Like I would love to go to school in a place like this. Super amazing. And I love the chairs and even the way, the treatment you did with the desks where you have the horizontal surface, but then underneath there's all this kind of matter that you can sort of see, and the fact that you made that translucent. So you kind of from above in that view that you showed, we can sort of see through the desk. And so it makes the whole idea of really sitting down and, you know, studying or listening to a lecture. It's just like such an amazing environment that you're setting up. That would be really, I think, just kind of, it would draw your attention in a different way, and you would really be very interested in being in that space. And then those other kind of large elements, like here in the center, in the top, where you cut through the section. And I guess, is that some kind of core or light well? This thing, maybe I should point on the Miro board if I can. Yeah, like this thing. I don't know if you can see my, right here. Is that the thing you're cutting through? What is that?
You mean this part?
Yeah, this stuff that.
Actually, this is just a space created during the formation of the classrooms, and I think it just kind of break the very straightforward classrooms into like half separate space, and to make the space more complex. And for the youth, maybe some kind of introduce light to some areas, but more is for the to enrich the space itself.
Yeah, because I love the idea that you would not necessarily need to be like in a closed room with a door, but that these things, the way they're situated, you know, you get little like clusters, little zones within the space, so that, you know, depending on what activity is going on, you could move to different parts of that. You know, even to call it room seems sort of strange to me, because it's such a, you know, an unusual configuration. It's more like a landscape. And so I think you really succeeded in one of the challenges that seems latent in the brief, is sort of like how landscape-like things begin to kind of come into an interior, and that whole dialogue between something we would normally consider to be like a site. Like here, you know, I feel like it could be a tree trunk growing up through the classroom, which is something in earlier, you know, in modern architecture, sometimes that was done. But this is like way more amazing, because it's sort of a very special idea of a, you know, I don't know if it's a tree or if it's a completely synthetic thing. So it's really beautiful. And I also love the way in that same, the image below the one we were just talking about, where you have the kind of green mass that sort of looks like it's fallen on the other mass. And then the sort of figural aspect of it, it's almost like its silhouette starts to slide off and drip like paint onto the other, you know, the blue or grayish bluish mass below it. And those kind of small moves are really amazing, really beautiful.
Thank you.
Because it starts to break up the way, like if you think about buildings, you know, usually with architecture, you can kind of see what the tectonic relationships are. Like, you know, you look at a facade and there's a door, it's like, oh, that's the door, this is the facade, there's the window. In your project, because you're making those kind of moves where things start to slip off and move across other parts of the mass, it kind of compounds that. Like, you can't just necessarily look at that and be like, oh, I understand where, you know, where I would make a seam in this mass. So it sort of like starts to become this more compound thing, which I think is really quite compelling, because it produces sort of a sense of mystery as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for the comments. Ren, definitely, you've been forced to the studio, always pushing the boundaries, always taking it to the next level. I agree with the comments. I think the project on its own, it shines a lot. And then once you put a lot of the after effects, I know, you know, it's the excitement of you know, learning new things that you just want to do. But I think that as your career in the school moves forward, you need to, you know, take a step back, look at what you're doing, and it becomes a little bit about editing the stuff that you have done, so that the hard work that you did is showcased without, you know, you trying to add too much to it. But overall, I think that all massings are very, you know, well composed, and I agree with the comments. I think that now moving forward, we have to start thinking on, and I guess it's like as a studio, we have to start thinking about like how these things come together, how do they address the ground. I think Marcelyn mentioned like maybe that pocket that you have is like a tree trunk that comes through it. So now like how does nature, and I think for you, because you have like this bubbly landscape, and in some areas it seems like you're rendering it kind of like translucent, like if it was glass. Like imagine that, you know, you have this coming into your classroom, and then you have like kids that are walking. I mean, it might be a distraction, but you have kids walking in through there, and they're looking at the kids that are inside the classroom. I think those would be like very fantastic moments. Thank you for that, for all the good work, and super excited to see that you were able to get this far.
Yeah, thank you for your great comments. I will work on them. Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, Marcelyn. Thank you, Majeda. I think Majeda is going to stay for one more. But Marcelyn was gracious enough to join us for our first two students. And I really appreciate that, Marcelyn, and thank you for making the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, William. And it's great to see you, Majeda, and really nice to meet all of you. And I look forward to next semester when I see you in Theories of Contemporary Architecture too. Good luck, everybody. Beautiful work. I look forward to seeing the final.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcelyn.
Bye.
All right, guys. So we're just going to give, we're on time, we're good. Our next crit, 2 more minutes. Hopefully she shows up. And yeah, how did it go so far? Dheer, Ren, how do you guys feel? Happy?
I can relax now, to be honest. It's, you know, the 12-hour time zone difference, you know, brings a little bit of confusion because I'm from India. I didn't introduce myself, right? So I am Dheer from India. Sorry. So I'm happy with how much I did.
Yeah.
And you know, everyone is also pretty satisfied with what they've done with the last minute hustle also.
Yeah, no, definitely. Ren, what do you think?
I just will go shopping today. Have a break.
Okay, so that's what you do for fun? Go shopping?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Yes, absolutely, guys. You know, we'll talk about it more at the end of it, but you know, definitely, you know, enjoy this moment. You know, breathe. I think everybody was able to produce very good work. Go look at what other sections are doing as well. You know, check what other classmates are. You know, these are, you guys will graduate with these guys. So you know, go look at them. Hopefully, you know, soon enough we all get to be in the building and you guys get to work with each other and, you know, learn from each other. Because I think that was one of the most important things from my experience, that I learned a lot from my friends, from the people that are still my friends. So I think that, you know, that definitely goes a long way. Okay.
Yeah, you're really proud of what you've done. I've taken a look at everything on the mural board. Everything looks great. I'm excited for the next two as well. Yeah, and also great job, those of you who are zooming in from different time zones. I know your pain. I've been teaching a studio at a completely different time zone. I'm now zooming from Oman, and it's 2 in the morning. So I know the hurdles that you have to go through doing
All
a
right.
late night.
Christiana's here. You're complaining already, so you know, let's get this party going. Hi, Christiana.
Hi, thank you
How
for.
are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for making the time. So this is my friend and colleague, Christiana Bennett. She teaches at RPI. She is teaching thesis and she's teaching seminars, and you know, she made a little bit of time, and she's in the East Coast, so she made a little bit of time of her Friday afternoon when she was ready to, you know, go party to join us today. So thank you, Christiana, for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, I wish I was there. We had our first snow today already, so yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes, definitely. You know, not missing the snow.
No.
Okay. All right. So, okay, take it away. Who's next? I think Adriana. Is it? Sorry, I can't see my list. That's why I am. But whoever's next.
I think it's me.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. My man,
Okay,
Gary.
I'll share my screen. Oh. Oh, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. This is my classroom, and the first image is about the close-up view. My project is about connecting the ego with the classroom, and I think in the process, I enjoy the format of egos, and I translate it into the classroom form. For example, the walls and the furnitures. And about the color, I have to say they are all what I dreamed about these days, because I think the elementary school is important for kids to imagine, and also important to dream. So I designed them according to my own dreams, and it's a very presentative feeling product. And for example, the color mainly connected with purple, pink, and blue. And the materials are very shiny to make people happy. Okay, that's it. Okay. And I will share my images. Oh, can you see my PDF? Okay. It's a close-up, and it's a details about the desk, mainly about egos, but I think it's not only about ego, because the method I built this model is about to connect. Maybe I can use it with any animals or other stuffs. And the material for the material, I like transparent things, and also the reflection is important because they can bring imaginary effects. So the color is very shiny and maybe a little bit maybe it's very naive, yeah, maybe very naive, and I like shiny things because I think for people who are very young, they want stuff to be interesting and can bring them imagine. So it's the main form of the classroom one, and during I design the classroom, I find it's very good for kids to play with the form because there are many acute angles, and it's definitely advantage. They are like coral or crystals, so people can climb up and down and play with the house. So that's what I was thinking when I designed the classrooms. And these are another 3 classrooms. Okay, thank you. Shall I stop sharing my screen or?
No, Gary, how are they gonna see the work? You can go to your Miro and put the images on the screen.
Okay. Can you see my Miro board?
I have to share the other screen.
I think there's something really nice about the way that you're hyper detailing and staging the scene in your project. You call it naive, but it's also playful and almost as if, you would see a classroom at the end of the day with all of the parts and iPads on the table, basketballs. I think this idea of staging is key to like the way that you're presenting or representing your space. I think when you talk about your project, you want to talk about it in the same rigor that you felt when you were designing. So just kind of calm down and don't just describe to us what's happening in the images, but tell us a little bit more about what we're not seeing. You can talk about transparency and aperture and the way that you're introducing light into space versus, I don't know, the solid moments, the in-between moments you're creating between the classrooms. We talked about this in the other last 2 as well, but I think it's nice how you have like almost this bubblegum landscape, but the edges are a bit more sharp and creased in certain areas, and you have more of like a looser fit around some of the other spaces or clusters. I'd like to see maybe the landscape take on a stronger role in the division of space. So either you play on this idea of loose fit versus hugging and drapery almost, because it seems like you're using the landscape as a soft, well, not really draping, you're underlaying it. But it almost has this cloth-like feel, but I wonder what happens if it is slightly draped over some pieces where you have like the creased edge, if it were to get softer and actually flow on top of some of your surfaces. What kind of space would you get from like this hooded almost effect of draping the landscape over? But overall, I think the project's really great. I like your use of gradients and the introduction of and the separation of materials that you're working with, and sort of dividing almost in a chopping motion versus like a surgical kind of framing. I think the use of both, I don't know about the use of either or. I think the fact that you're using both is interesting. Maybe I prefer the softer edge, but you talked about this idea of acute angles. I'm not quite sure what you were trying to get at with that, but I don't know if you wanted to explain a bit more or answer to anything that I was saying, but I'll leave it up to you or Christianna.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoy Majeda's description of the landscape and the softness of draping over. I think I would have to agree. I feel I simply was going to ask you to explain a little bit more about what's happening in the landscape, and also the precise placement of these objects within, right? Like there's a central object and there are three surrounding, but the three surrounding have breakages between. And so I would want to understand more this organizational strategy that you have. Another observation that I think is really special to your project, I love this idea of the dream, and in fact you're designing some of your inspiration is coming from your own dreams. And I think there's a contradiction, but perhaps one that's productive. You know, there's some of the coloration of these, both the interior furniture objects and the larger spatial objects that sit on the landscape. There's this like airbrushing blurry effect. And when I think about some dreams, or maybe the typical tropes of dreams of kind of being blurry or not having full view, there's some kind of semblance or visual, maybe visual rhetoric there that's understood. But then you've got a narrative about really liking shiny objects, and a lot of both the exterior of the bigger objects as well as the interior furniture objects have a shiny quality. And so I think that blurriness and some of the sharpness and the metallic nature of the shiny are in contradiction with one another in terms of the premise of the dreamlike, but perhaps you're getting at something more realistic, right? That this idea of the dream operates in degrees of resolution, some more blurry, some less blurry, some more shiny, etc. And I think you could work upon that as maybe a motivation for some of the work. I think another question I would have is the furniture is tumbled and not upright or what have you, and maybe at first glance I say, why is that so? But perhaps if you're designing for kids, the world is not necessarily right side up, or it doesn't have to be necessarily so, right? They'll sort of co-opt space and use objects according to a logic that isn't kind of ingrained by other things. And I guess I would want to hear more about you know, why things are oriented as they are, why things blend into other as they are, perhaps from the perspective excuse me, of your of the inhabitants, if you will. And then I have questions also about some of the like the seams and the transitions from like cloudy material to shiny material and others. But I'm at risk of getting really long-winded. Maybe I'll pause and let you respond. Do you have any, maybe that's a question there. Some of the seams, I don't know if maybe, oh, I don't have like drawing abilities here. Oh, and I'm drawing on Zoom then, hovering in. So here, right, like these seams, are they more playful now, or is there a strategy as to where the transitions occur? I think there's a legitimate argument either way.
Oh, for the transition, I think it's a gap, and it's a gap between the dream and the reality, and it's cannot be avoided. And also, it's like just like the metals very cold. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. I think it does fall in line with the dreamscape you're building. But perhaps to our conversation, also to respond to Majeda's comments, what is your position on the landscape? You know, what is your approach there, do you think?
Sorry, are you point out something? I can't see your mouse.
Oh no, I wasn't pointing.
No, that's not. Oh, sorry. That's not your mouse.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I wonder if you could speak a little bit more to the site idea.
Yeah. I organized the ground to like an envelope. For example, the four volume and the uneven ground envelope space, like for example, like this image, it can express my idea best, like the two sides. Those two rows can explain my dreams. Like it's just like a valley or a canyon, and well, when me and or kids walk in the outside the classroom, they will have a lot of fun and enjoy the elementary school. That's what I think about the landscape.
Thank you guys for the comments. So Gary, yes, you know, I think that you got some good feedback, and there's things that we have to address and really think about, because you touch upon something about creating this world that it was between your dreams and your and the reality of being in a classroom. And that as a bigger idea, I think that's a really good idea, but you took like I don't know, almost 7-8 minutes to say that. And it could have been much more simpler than, starting by describing the different elements that you have going on in your project. But, that's totally fine because it's the midterm, and, this is kind of like where we take cues of the things that we do and we address it so that for the final is better. But overall, Gary, super excited with the work. You came such a long way from the renders and the outcome that you had last class till today. And man, I'm super proud of you. You saw, I messaged you right away when I saw that you were able to deliver this quality, and it can only get better. So thank you, Gary, for putting the work.
Thank you, Virgil. Thank you all.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Woo.
Yes, I'm here.
And Christianna, sorry, I did not introduce the project, but I just assumed that you're so good that you probably read the brief. So they're designing a school, and then we are at the stage where they first started with the creature, then they designed the furniture, and then from the furniture they moved into the individual classrooms. So each student has about 2 or 3 classrooms, and then they're dealing with different ways of deploying the different classrooms on the landscape.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Wu.
Okay. I will share my screen. Can you see the mirror board?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me if the video is going okay. Otherwise, I can play it on my computer. Is there sound?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's see. Wait. Oh, yeah, okay. That's the video. And I will talk about my design with some images from the video. So this is the starting point of our studio. And I have this creature, it's a lion fighting against a snake. So the idea is to unfamiliarize this animal creature and make it into a tool that I can apply to my architecture body. So I begin by identifying an interesting fact about this sculpture piece is that there is kind of tendency of movement in the static piece.
So you can see from the opening of the mouth and the curvature of the backbone and even the tendons, the muscle in the back leg. So there's always this movement hidden underneath the creature piece. So I began to think about how to apply this movement idea into my design. I used I used modules from the animal and begin to move them and accumulate them onto the furniture and architectural work. So when I apply them, I stopped seeing them as like actual animal, but more as a tool similar to sphere or rectangle. So I'm looking into the curvature, the shape, the line of movement that can be exhibited into the design. So you can see that with the furniture, there's always this kind of, even partly hidden, there's this kind of line of circular movements inside the design. And there is this kind of detailed level against a larger scale level present in all of the angles. So whenever it's inside the classroom or outside or anywhere, you can ponder upon different details and think about the scales that is possible in one design. So for the classroom volume, it's very irregular and volumetric. That's why I kind of use the light fixture and using some of the modules from the creature to occupy the space. And all of the furnitures are fit into the spaces according to possible usage of each of the volumes instead of just dropping inside. Going to the exterior of the classroom, I also have this idea of the line of movement. So you can see the windows and the doors are kind of following the shape of the classroom, and it's kind of taking away the volumes and consuming it. There's also different levels of detail you can see anywhere in the design. So also another thing is that I use some of the regular windows and the regular doors and even the most ordinary furniture pieces into the design, while this, I would say that this design is generally very unconventional. So by combining some of the very ordinary pieces that we see every day to, along with the curved, the irregular, the imaginary pieces, there's this contrast of the ordinary daily life with the unconventional design, so that there's a starting point for people to unleash their imagination. And also the landscape is embracing the rooms. So the rooms are arranged according to some similarities and in their shapes for different passageways, opportunities, and opportunity for square at the middle. And then the landscape is kind of hugging the rooms and place them into one general body. Yeah, that's the idea for my design. Thank you. Let me go back to the mirror board. Wait, sorry, wait a minute. Here. Oh.
guess maybe I'll begin. I have to say your presentation is really nice. Your verbal presentation, taking us through your work, is very clear to me. The images are also extraordinarily compelling. And I appreciate that you're able to really zoom in to very particular details and then zoom all the way out into what sounds like the latest consideration for the project, the site, which you also have some very specific ideas about. So I appreciate that. I think maybe my first question, I think it's really spectacular. You've got, so I understand that you have your creature and you've analyzed what looks like a sculptural object of a lion and a snake, and you're using the movement and the shape and volumetric attributes of that sculpture and reworking it across different scales. But you've also got this really beautiful linear, like script element that appears as what looks like lighting features. Yes, you're hovering over. Yes, exactly. And at certain scales, a real wow moment, I think for me, is in the last image in your Miro. Yes. So from far away, I think in your video, I thought, oh wow, the filigree element gets thick in this yellow object, but actually it's not only thickened, but it's not linear, you know, it becomes another kind of subdivision detail of the creature. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to push the like linear filigree of that occurs in the lighting elements. It also starts to define, I guess, some of the outlining of windows, but it doesn't behave, and I think that's a really exciting aspect. Like, it doesn't behave just as like an outline of the window elements. It doesn't behave only as lighting. In fact, it doesn't only behave as a linear element, but in the way I'm reading it is it actually gains volume and performs in a different way. And now when I look at everything according to this linear sort of script or filigree, I don't know whether to call it an element or approach, you know, I see it occurring almost everywhere. It's on the landscape in this gold line with like the melty, I guess like white areas on top of the silver. I don't know why I'm losing all my words, but yeah, I think there's something really phenomenal there between like the line and the volumetric, and the way that they're not so clearly distinct. And I think that's a positive aspect. And in fact, it's something about like zooming in at different levels and seeing it either get thick in terms of that last image with the yellow and gold room, yes, or at times it stays thin, but it depends on your proximity to it, your engagement with it, that it gains these different characters. I also particularly enjoy the teacher's board podium. I just, I don't know if I have any like critical way of getting into it yet, but the images I've seen of that stand is just really robust and beautiful. Also the ball pits defined by the large lions is really amazing. But I'll defer rather than ramble on. I think my first comment is about, yeah, just really enjoying your verbal presentation, and this observation of the linear and the volumetric, I think, is at play in a very nice way here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would second that. Great project, Wu. I think Christianna said it all with her comments on your verbal presentation, your attention to detail. I really enjoyed this view where we're seeing the backpack strung on the back of the chair. I'm sure we all did this in grade school, and sometimes the backpack would be too heavy, and when you stand up, it would topple over. And you have sort of imagery of this kind of happening in motion, and I think that's really successful in your project in the way that you're really trying to translate motion, not only in this idea of space, but also in like the formal product of what you're creating. I like the way that you're really, like each of the figures in terms of the way that you're applying materiality, it really looks as if I'm just looking at the render with the zoom in of the purple and the orange cluster, and it really looks as if you're dancing with each other, just like the original object that you're working with. Also with the landscape as well, I think each of your clusters are kind of forming a dance with the landscape. And I love your portrayal of the, I mean, we talked about this in the last one, the draping, but I feel like this actually, the cream sort of moments where you're highlighting feel as if they're draped on top of the silver elements in your landscape. I really enjoy the moments where we're reading the hard edge of the square primitive that you're using and the sphere along with like the more melty elements. And I think that's really successful in the way that you're translating the landscape and kind of embedding each of these clusters within it. I also think this is one of the first projects that I've seen with, or maybe just the way that you're rendering it at an oblique. It feels almost as if it's on a cliff, and some pieces are above others in terms of the topology. I'm not sure if that's true, or I'm kind of just visualizing this in the way that you're having your render camera. But I think that's an interesting thing to think about. I mean, we talked a little bit about this idea of verticality and whether these clusters ever grow not just horizontally along the landscape, or is there an opportunity for them to kind of escalate in height? But I feel like this might be an interesting solution to that, is to kind of work with the topology and sort of embed almost on a cliff side where you have, the way that I'm picturing it, at least right now, is that the orange and purple mass is on higher ground than the yellow and the blue green and the pink. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to consider if it's the literal, and kindergarten starts at the bottom and then the 6th grade is kind of going up the hill in an upward journey, or maybe that's a little bit too expected. Maybe you have to kind of jump around as you grow between your classes to experience the full site. You would, start at one end and then you would jump over across, then you would jump over. This is an interesting thing to consider with this idea of clustering and the site and how you're sort of tackling. I know your site is flat, literally, but I'm just thinking now, if you were to design the topography, what would that look like?
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful, because actually, to be honest, we just started designing the landscape for around a week, and we are still developing it. So it will be really helpful for me to think about the topography at a later stage.
All right, thank you for the comments. Yes, definitely. I think the work. It's great. You really master the way in which you started tackling the landscape, and even though this is just like you mentioned, a first step, it's definitely something that it's going to be developed and become fantastic. I also think that moving forward, now we have to start thinking how would this be encompassed by a larger mass that will be the school. But I think you have all the tools to be able to develop the project further. Thank you for the good work.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Majeda. Thank you, Christianna. I don't know if Christianna, you can stay for one more. I know Majeda has to go, but appreciate the feedback and thank you for making the time.
Thank you, William. Great work, guys. Congratulations to everyone.
You stay for another one, Christianna?
Yes, I can. Good to see you again, Majeda.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we are joined now by Natal. She teaches in Natu. Okay, Natu. Sorry. She teaches, I think, in the 1A, right?
Yeah, 1A.
Yeah, she teaches in 1A, and you know, she's great to have you here. Meeting you for the first time, so you know, virtually.
Nice to meet you too.
Glad that you made the time to be here. Curime, are you just waiting or? Okay, maybe he's not there. Okay, so Natu, I would say that I don't know if you had a little bit of time to go over the brief, but we started by each student started with a creature, and then the idea was to take that creature, hybridize that creature to start generating furniture, and then from furniture we went into the classroom, and with the hopes that later we're moving into the actual school.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna be joined by Curime in 5 minutes. Curime, he's also a faculty at SIRE, and he's the one that you know, is in charge of the robot lab. You guys are gonna be hanging out with Curime next week. He's gonna teach you some cool stuff in Grasshopper. All right, take it away. Next student.
I think it's me. Can I start it now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I'll just play my video on my computer because the network seems not so good. First, I started with a sculpture of the dogs. It's hard to say that it has some relationship with the classroom, but it has a lot of abilities. So for the furnitures, part of the characters of the creator fluid on parts of the chairs and the desks gives the alien shape and subtractions. So there's more possibilities for using such using such shapes. So maybe like kids can hang their tools on the back of the chair, and maybe some of the functions they created is by the kids. So here, I think my title breeze means the free space of the recreation. I think that's very important. And for the classroom, space is every space is unique. Function happens after the space is settled. So there are separated ones for maybe different classes. This one shows the art classroom, and it needs to be big enough to create artworks. And there will be one with, there could be one with multiple layers in different elevations. So it is great for physics classes. And for the shape of the class, there are deformed windows, and it's big enough for lighting, and they're on the top and also the side of the classroom, giving the enough sunlight and the landscape, and for the landscape to come in. And then I hope the warm color and the feelings can extend through the walls to the playground. And after leaving the classroom, it seems like students can get out straight into a nature environment with little hills. Sorry, the video is end. Let me finish my statement. I can using the pictures for the landscape. And I hope these, I hope the kids can extend their feelings of the classroom after they just leave them, and they can go straight into the nature environment with little hills and ponds. And playing up and down is more interesting than flat in sports ground, I think. And then when seeing the classroom from the outside, they are like some huge stones sitting on the streams and grassland, like a nature mountain. And for kids, they may just sit and play on some lower part of the walls of the classroom, as well as the landscapes. I think that's important. That's all. That's my statement. Thank you. I'll show you all the pictures. That's it.
Thank you. This was another, I think you have a really great presentation and clear ideas that are associated with each image. In particular, I really enjoy your perspective that, you know, something I think that you said, that the function of the space is created when it's settled, like it's waiting for activation and habitation. And I see that very much on the way that you've set up the interior. And now that I'm learning, it seems, you know, each of these classrooms may, as larger objects in the landscape, will also need to speak to one another, be coordinated with one another. I wonder if that idea scales up in your mind, if the interior is activated, or the function is created by its inhabitation, by its engagement, if the same thing happens on the exterior. And I think it could, and maybe a detail that I see, well, let's see. I see it happen. Oh, I don't know if you can see me in Miro. Oh, I can draw in Miro. Okay, I'll just highlight and then I'll erase. But these pockets I think are really nice. You know, it's like, and I see it happen out here on the exterior, and then there was one even at the tiny scale of some of the furniture, that the way you've clustered your shapes allow for these pockets on the horizontal and the vertical, that I think are really beautiful, and I think would be at the scale of the site. Oops.
There is not all the pictures. I can show you all of them for you to find them.
Okay, sure. Yeah, it was one of the early.
Sorry, let me.
It almost, at the small scale,
like
makes
this?
me.
Is this one?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, maybe like a bigger idea here is down at this furniture scale. I could imagine like just touching these surfaces is almost like a very, it's like a braille. Oh, it's this one, yeah. It's a very small note, but there are just these really beautiful like void pockets that emerge by the way your the volume and shapes of the dogs merge with the chair, and then they create this like in between dog and chair space that I think is really special and unique. And I feel that happens between, on a different scale, between object and site on the exterior. I think at the scale of the furniture, yeah, it's like a radical new braille of like tactile, you know, reading surfaces, conveying ideas through these surfaces and furniture that I think is really special. But I'm rambling again, so I'll let Natu jump in. And I love the landscape and the colorfulness. Your description of it, I think, is very strong. That it's playful rolling hills.
I agree. I think the images you've produced are beautiful. Speaking on the topic of scale, one of your images, let me see if I can annotate here, this one in particular, the scale between the objects on the table and the chair, like there seems to be a mismatch there that I'm really interested in if we're gonna take it in like some otherworldly narrative sort of world building line of thinking. Like all these objects seem like they're too big for the furniture you've created, so it makes me question the scale of these spaces, not only relative to like the human body, but relative to each other, right? So in this image, it looks like the rooms are more or less the same size, but in it seems like they're all sort of at a different ground level, and so it makes me wonder, like, if there's more to one of these volumes, like under the ground or something, right? That we're not seeing, like it's sort of an iceberg effect or something like that. And I was wondering if you could speak to like the textures and materials that you've chosen, because in some places it starts to feel like, or starts to look like textile, but then here we get these like fleshy purpley blobs that are sort of that have these like more metallic sort of inlays. I'm wondering what your process was, or what your thoughts were in making those decisions.
Yes, I can explain it. Taking this next example. Sorry, the network is not very well. I use the picture. Classroom like this, they have deformed glasses on the top of this classroom. You can see they have enough light for the inside of the classroom, and for the shells of it, it is have two parts of different materials to make it not just like a huge stone. It's very boring for just putting it on the ground, and some of them it will be shiny, and some parts of it just like a little bit. I don't know how to say, but I think there should be some conflict between them, so that make it more interesting. And yeah, so maybe it can also create some possibilities. For example, the shining parts can be kind of the glasses with a little transparency, so you can see the blurring things inside to the outside, and also from the outside to the inside. So it has more possibilities, and so it can be used in soft materials for students to play with. And I think it has more possibilities because I separate them to two parts on the shell. I hope it can answer your question.
That being said, I'm wondering if some of the decisions you made in terms of the material applications on the exterior find their way to the interior, and sort of even further down back into the furniture that you've designed. Do you mind flipping to an image, the one of the desk?
Which one?
I guess the top view.
Top view of the
this guy.
Classroom, or the volume, or the inside?
The top view of the classroom. This one.
This one.
I'm annotating Zoom. I don't know if you can see that. This one.
It's maybe not clear. This is a top view. Is that the same picture?
No, I meant of the interior space.
Okay. This one?
The one above it? Sorry.
Uh,
Yeah, that one.
okay.
So even the texture, I guess even the texture here, right, on the backs of the chairs, like I'm wondering, I almost feel like there's a way for that sort of braille that Christianna was mentioning could find its way elsewhere, right? And can start to be like maybe like a wayfinding technique, or you know, start to reference maybe the different like functions of each of these classrooms that you've created. Also just think like, and I'm wondering too about the dogs, right? Like their texture seems to be consistent throughout. It's always this smooth sort of like iridescent metallic material. What happens if that starts to sort of or they start to take on that like fleshy sort of material that you're using on the exterior? Is that going to affect the atmosphere? Is that going to affect, like, I guess, how the pieces of furniture relate to each other? Yeah, I mean, all of these are just, I guess, propositions for you to think about moving forward.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Great comments. I think Natu, she talks about the issue of scale, and definitely, you know, if, just like as she mentions, if we, you know, remove ourselves from what we know to be classic classrooms, then, you know, you can imagine these kids carrying, you know, these, you know, big ass book bags, or like, you know, huge books, and, you know, just the scissors, they're like, you know, insanely big. But I mean, overall, Adriana, I think that if we take the issue of scale, and if you look at that scalar maneuver that you have done with the furniture, that actually doesn't translate too well on the outside of the mask. I know the way that you've been working, and I know that, you know, the work is there, but I think that moving forward, maybe that's that level of detail that we bring to the outside. So now that same articulation of the ornament of the furniture starts articulating and creating spatial divisions or giving qualities to the massing on the outside. I think that's a great comment, and it's a magnificent way of moving forward.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Adriana. Good job so far during the semester.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful work.
Thank you.
All right.
Nice job.
Next, David.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to give a little intro first. So I'm David Garcia, and as Virgil said, the project kind of starts out with an animal, and then is kind of morphed into the different kind of scales of architectural pieces from interior to exterior. So and it creates these kind of really you know, different unconventional shapes. So I try to really focus in on the combination or juxtaposition and play on the familiar and unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So getting into the actual images, basically from the video, I try to basically show in the different scales, almost relating to like the powers of 10, the kind of different means to morphing the different design elements throughout each different scale. So basically, it kind of starts out with the actual model that was used to morph all these objects, and then kind of starts with the important chair, which is like the kind of simplified means to understand the combination of the two, the combination of the dog and the element. So it kind of acts as a more obvious approach to understanding how the pieces of the dog can be used as pieces of the chair, which is like the leg being the leg and the back end being the tail. And so that acts as an introduction, and as it kind of expands out, the exterior walls and the kind of shapes of the space start to get a little more abstract with hints of the kind of normalcy, where you'll see the traditional like wood flooring with these abstract walls, or the fact that you'll have kind of a familiar white blank wall, but now with these kind of spots of brown, like a dog's skin would represent. So you start to see these combinations of the dog mixed with the elements, starting in different scales. And so as it gets out into the exterior scale, you start to lose the fidelity in the normalcy, and you start to get into like a real cluster of the dog as the clay of the mass. And then you start to see only subtle hints of a conventional like window being like morphed onto the actual skin of the mass. So you start to see the mass kind of the windows crawls around the sides, create skylights and side windows. And then so as it kind of expands out into the actual grouped scale, you start to see that it becomes this kind of collection of these dogs laying down, and basically each classroom is the students inhabiting these bundles of dogs rather than these boxes. So in the landscape, they kind of rest on in this kind of like cloth like landscape, to where whenever they sit down in the cloth, it kind of I guess wraps around it or molds to the form of the dog. So it really just tries to understand a combination of the animal and the feature, starting from a kind of simple scale that's understandable for the human that interacts with the chair. They're obviously sitting on the chair for most of the time. And then as it expands out, it starts to get more abstract and more uncomfortable. Thank you.
So I guess my first thought is that chair is so grotesque in the best way. I love how you've like been sort of literal in a leg is like a dog leg is the leg of the chair, and the tail sort of holding the back of the chair. I think that's really smart, and your techniques and sort of the structure of the chair peeking through also reads or translates into the space you've created. There's something about the narrative or the scene you've sort of laid out in the interior space that's a little chaotic. Like, it, to me, feels like, last day of school before like a vacation or something. Like, there are chairs knocked over, there's papers on the floor, like maybe this is like a bunch of kids that like don't care what their teacher has to say and kind of just are a mess. But I think there's your sort of sticking to the dog as, I guess maybe William, this is a question for you, is everyone in your section working with the same animal, or is this just sort of coincidence that back to back we're looking at dog projects?
Yeah, everybody's different. Everybody has its own creature, as that's kind of like what we're calling it.
Right.
But yeah, everybody has like a different animal. In this case, they both have dogs, but they have different postures.
Okay, right. Yeah, I think the moves you've made to like bring the dog's skin up out of the ground and to sort of wrap that screen and some of the furniture really starts to feel like, you know, there's something like strangely comforting in that. Like even in the landscape, the way that you were describing it as this like fabric that they're all kind of like nestled in. Yeah, I mean, these are just rambling thoughts I'm having initially, but I'd love to hear what Curime has to say. Hi, Curime. Good to see you.
Hello. Well, I don't know. I mean, first of all, I also am very attracted to this chair. I really like that you reveal that there's some alu structure in it, and then this kind of latex version of a dog somehow. And then I also do really like actually the top right image where you have these alu windows where you can feel they're made out of a material which is familiar, unlike many of the other things. And you almost like open your space like you open a can. It's like, it's the image on the top right. Mm-hmm. In the video you see it better, but if you go more to the right, you see how the window is there, not in there, the frame, and it's just kind of like pulled open. So it like also kind of reminds you of like the dog food in some way.
Right.
So I'm personally drawn to these kind of images here where we kind of like from the outside and like are in this landscape and we don't exactly know what it is, and then kind of to the chair. I lose it a little bit in the floor plan. It seems not as much crafted as the rest. It seems like you put a couple of tables into it, and also like kind of the geometry is not as, I mean, it's obviously just the remainder of the void, what's it's inside, but it's not as playful as the rest. So I wish it was a little bit more unexpected, the room on the inside. And so maybe that is something you can further explore on how you can like some of this like detailing which you put into the chair or kind of like on your exterior scene, bring it to the interior.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think you could play up like the playful messiness of the way you've arranged the furniture and things like that. I almost wonder too if it wouldn't make more sense to flip the floor plan so that the screen, that really long screen, somehow finds its way on the other side. Or something like it either needs to be flipped like on the vertical or the horizontal, just because it does very much feel like you just sort of put in furniture in the void. Like Curime is saying, I think there's definitely room for you to sort of play with that. I'm wondering too why the dog sculpture or your preacher is sort of in the center of the space. Like what is sort of, I mean, I understand it's like the source of it's like your muse for the project, but I don't know that it needs to be like smack dab in the middle of the room. Like, is there a way it can sort of be coming out of the form, like, or of the walls or something itself, and sort of making itself present that way, rather than being like propped up on a pedestal in the center of this space? And if that is what you're trying to go for, like it's supposed to represent the teacher or something like that, I would play that up, because right now it sort of is like just lost in there, you know, surrounded by everything else.
Yeah, I think it was more so, yeah, like explaining like this is the muse of the project, and then also kind of going with the scene of this kind of art classroom, that, like this is like a still life that the class is painting or drawing.
Oh, I see.
So it works as the scene and to explain the object that creates all the masses.
Then maybe it's a question of scale, right? Because that doesn't read so well.
Well, I mean, I assume the assignment was to show the whole floor plan, right? I mean, I look at the other examples and it seems kind of like you've been asked to kind of reveal the whole thing. But what I see like a big difference to your colleagues is that you actually use a material we're familiar with, like the floor, right? And it's really strong and it doesn't kind of play so well with the rest. So it's really kind of like a contrast. And that's why like maybe your scene doesn't sit as well as it does in some of the others, where just the colors across the images kind of play nicer with each other. So maybe like a different color would feel like more the whole thing is kind of embedded. But I don't know. You don't know until you actually switch it and look at it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair comment, David. Overall, like, you know, another question that the whole studio has been posting is kind of like, how can we deal with these strong architectural elements, like a window, right? So if you look at his windows, those are, you know, kind of like regular windows. But then how can you take that distorted and still apply it to an unconventional skin and still make it look like a window, right? So, you know, in the case of the floor, David, I think maybe that strong edge that is creating at the border on the floor, maybe that's what's kind of like giving the disconnect between floor and massing and creating this divide. And I mean, yes, I would say maybe moving forward, it might be an issue of materiality, might be an issue of maybe how the floorboards, instead of just being a texture map, we find ways of modeling that, and then, you know, they'll turn and become part of the wall or something like that, or it becomes like some, you know, weird dog structure in the middle of the room. But I think those are valid comments. Thank you, guys. Overall, great work, David, throughout the semester. The outcome, I couldn't be more happy with it. And thanks for the effort. Sorry, Christianna, I don't know if you were gonna say something and I just like cut the entire thing.
Oh, I enjoyed the conversation. I maybe in short, I agree that you hit on something really special with the chair. And my comment would be, there seems to be a heavy reliance upon the legs, maybe because of the chair, like the dog leg form. I do see some more of the volume and shapiness of the dog appearing in the bigger, but it seems to go from like, it's just very leggy in the chair leg, and then there, I think the purple maybe is very reliant upon the legs. So I guess I would challenge you to look at other of the formal aspects of the dog. And maybe, and I think the discussion is around like the middle scale. I think, again, there's been a lot of attention to detail in the furniture scale that's very successful. There's beginning success in the massive classroom scale, but the middle is still being negotiated. So in all, I don't know if that's adding much, but thank you, Will, and everybody for today.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Take care. See you soon.
Thank you. Okay, bye. Nice work, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Natu. I don't know if you want to stay for one more or if you have to go, but I appreciate the time and thank you for, probably you might have to go back to sleep.
I can hang out for one more.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Thank you. Thanks for making the time. So now we are joined by, I don't want to mess up your name, my man. Is it Kordae?
Kordae,
yeah. Okay, you know,
hey.
What's up? How you doing? Nice to virtually meet you. We met through email, but it's first time that I guess we're doing a face to Zoom type of thing. So glad that you were able to make the time. So Kordae, right?
Right. Yeah, that's it.
He's a director and he's also a faculty at SCI-Arc, and he's making some time to come and join us and see some of our projects. So thank you for making the time.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what everyone's working on. You know, I hear a lot of good things, so I'm excited.
All right. Okay. Next student, take it away.
Okay. I will share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can you see the sound?
No.
Can you hear the sound?
No. You have to share the sound also while you're sharing the screen.
Where I can share the sound?
If you,
okay.
if you stop sharing, you'll have to reshare your screen.
Okay.
And then on the bottom, you should see share audio.
There's also no sound.
There's something there's a little sound, but I don't know if that's coming from you. But also, you have like a bunch of black boxes on the screen.
You've got to close your chat window that you have open right now on the top right. Or it's the it's all of our faces. If you can just exit out of that.
I have already clicked share the sound of the computer.
Yep.
But it's
we can hear the sound.
I think maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I can just express my project.
Yeah, you hear the sound, but you have some boxes on your
Okay.
screen. You have to remove that.
Okay, this is my project, and in this design, I started from some small to large, and started with the furniture design in classroom. When I shaped the chairs, tables, I tried to use some post-modernism to make them look no symmetry, simple repeating, and I just focus on ID details and enrich color as much as possible. And for the interior, you can see that I would like to create different spaces in classroom, like it's one for a normal class, and there is some entertainment space, and also there are some art space, and in the exterior of the classroom, you can see that I use some traditional window forms, but combine them in a different form. I try to use traditional element in a no traditional way, and I think it creates some contradiction invisible, but I think it's look the project different, and I believe that in the context of the COVID-19, the relationship between landscape and the building should not be separated, and building area and the public area should not be strictly distinguished. Yeah, this is the video, and I can share the mirror board. Yeah, this is images of my project, and I have already expressed the images, and I have already rethink the relationship between the people, building, and the landscape. I think in modern architecture design, people are often the subject, and buildings and furniture seem to just imply the existence of the objects of the subject. And a building is often just a container of the people. So I rethink this matter because through the COVID-19, the background, I can feel that buildings does not exist in its specific functions. For example, the curtain school is not just a place for teachers to teach or studies to learn. It is a place for our emotional communication, where we can communicate with our peers, and where we can communicate with who have knowledge and social experience than we do. So I think I think it is important for the school design. Yeah.
I have a question. Because how do I put this? I mean, I think it's very beautiful. I mean, I think you have a really strong sensibility in form. But I guess I'm more interested in the color. Like, what do the colors mean to you? Why? I mean, it's beautiful, but I'm just wondering if what you thought about the color, and does that play into your decision making?
The color, you mean is the interior or exterior?
Either one. I think I'm mainly focusing on the floor, the field of the building itself. But I'm just curious what that means to you, color.
Yeah. For the color, I think one thing is that I want to like the interior and the exterior have a strong comparison. You can see that the exterior I used like the red and the pink, and the interior I used the color like yellow and blue, and I think it can it can make the space I don't know how to say it, make the space prominent, and I think it look beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I'm asking is because you talked about the emotional communication and body communication. And I think about how potentially you could look into how colors make you feel, you know, and how that could start to dictate what spaces you're trying to create. Maybe look into color theory as a way into kind of breaking up some of your spaces within the spaces, if that makes any sense. Yeah, that's the only reason why I asked.
Yeah. I also see some paper that they see that like the blue, this color make people calm down. So I think this color maybe are supposed to are benefit to use in the spaces where people have the normal class, and the color like pink or yellow make people want to play, want to show their self. So maybe this color can be used in some entertainment spaces, yeah, or art spaces.
I have a question for you relating to the furniture. So I guess from the projects I've seen, everyone's done like one chair and you've done both. I'm wondering how each has affected your sort of process in generating like the overall massing for the classroom, and if you favor one over the other. Yeah. I'm just curious.
The exterior.
Well, no. So I'm wondering how both of the chairs you've designed have influenced your process, moving from just designing the furniture to the larger classroom massing. Because they're both sort of, I think your techniques for the both of them are very different. And so I'm wondering if there's one that you looked at more than the other, and what the reasoning was for producing two sort of two different designs.
You mean the two different chairs?
Yeah. So I mean, one chair, the base of the chair is really like the body of your preacher, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And in its entirety, and it's just sort of, it has extra like chair legs protruding out of it. Whereas the second one, you've sort of scaled down your preacher and multiplied it to create the chair legs, right? So there's two different ways of going about designing a chair. And I'm just wondering, like, which one influenced your process when you were designing the massing?
I think maybe the massing modules one have a big influence for my because for my classroom, because you know, the big classroom, the volume are also used the same techniques what I used in the chair. And the normal chair, I think it's also interesting because, you know, I use the creature like supporting structure to. I think it's very it's very supposed to use in classroom. You know, the children see these things not just like a normal chairs. Yeah.
Are you good, Nato? It's interesting. I'm looking at your project, and it's kind of when I look in Zoom and I look on my Miro app and I look in Miro in the windows, each of them, the colors look completely different, which is kind of interesting because I was just trying to get a higher resolution. But what I wanted to say And maybe because we're midterm, I'm gonna like split like two comments. One has to do more like with technique of presentation, and then the other one more with like what I think, which I find is really beautiful. So the first thing I want to say about your presentation is you lost me a little bit. There's a lot of words and like a lot of COVID and a lot of like, I don't know, things which like not necessarily, I'm sure you thought about, but which are very difficult to kind of point at. So in a previous presentation of one of your colleagues, I received kind of like a compliment on how like the idea as it was discussed would kind of correspond to the image was shown. So I think in your case, this is something for finals or in overall, you might want to like look at to kind of improve, to kind of make sure that the story you're telling and the images which are going with each other kind of match up, because we see all this project for the first time and we can only absorb so much information in this amount of time. And you have much more ideas and time spent with this project. So it's hard for us to get in, right? So I think this is like something to kind of think about moving forward, like how much information needs to be shared and where the images like line up with that. But this being said, looking at your presentation, I really like the 3 images on the right, the ones which are kind of like in the pillow, plus the chair to the left. And so what is interesting in your case is kind of looking at the Power of 10 story, I assume that those images to the right are your exterior, is that correct? But when I look at the image and you don't tell me anything about it, I could think this is actually the most close-up shot. It's some sort of pillow where this thing is like laying in. And I think somewhere there is actually kind of the story where you could build between the interior and the exterior. Because if your exterior looks kind of like something which is the interior, you have almost like a natural link on how you could link these two. The image to the left, which is the chair, where we kind of have the table and it's kind of the space is cut out. That scene has somehow like kind of an interesting framing in a way where it kind of is playing between the two scales. So I think that is a scene where you can learn from. So like I feel very reminded in all of your like images from like kind of like Asian porcelains or like, and you know, like very precious objects. So then like this, I mean, you know, this millionaire mansion where there's all these artworks, this ancient, right? But then when we kind of go into the floor plan and into the most left one, it's kind of like, you know, like on the right, I have this really precious object. Then I have this awesome chair and this amazing table. And then I look in the top floor and it looks like kind of somewhere like primary school, wood benches type of arrangement. So unless that is what you're intending, I feel like that's where you're kind of falling short of your own work. And maybe that's the area where you could kind of work on, like how can you bring the qualities which you have like in these images to the right, plus, I mean, those 4 images I'm personally drawn to your floor plan, your arrangement. And then actually I also have to say to the video, I'm not really sure what the sounds in your video do. I think sound is a very powerful way of enhancing something, but in your case, it was distracting. So I would really think about if sound was necessary, unless you wanted to throw us off. So anyway, these are comments, but I have to say these objects like laying in the pillows are beautiful. And like the way how you rendered the light, it's like you see it's an interior scene. So it would be kind of interesting to see how would it look like if it was outside. And then also like the pillows, just the quality of like how the folds are really beautiful. So I would really focus somewhere there and take those strengths and conquer the space, so to speak.
Okay, thank you for your suggestion.
I mean, these are just suggestions. I don't know if this is...
I think it's great.
If this lines up with what the studio is supposed to do, but...
No, but I mean, it's actually, you know, very good comments, Curime, because I think that it, you know, Fang, it's not not really, you know, just for you. I think it's an overall for, you know, everyone, because, you know, you guys are working with, you know, a particular way of dealing with, you know, this type of geometry, and, you know, you guys are in control of the steps. So if you're in control of the steps, you need to be able to recognize what's the bigger picture behind everything that you're doing, from texturing, from color, from, you know, posture, from, you know, the pillowing effect that the masking is creating on the ground. So you should be able to talk about all this. And I think that, you know, it's like Curime said, it's the midterm, right? So, you know, it's just, it's work in progress for all of us. And, you know, it can only get better. But I think that the comments are very spot on. Maybe the video, it could have been because you didn't compress once you got it out of After Effects, and then it was just too laggy, and then, you know, we hear weird sounds and when they shouldn't be. But, you know, I think all those things will get better for the final, and I think you did a good job putting everything together for today, and I appreciate that. So thanks for the effort.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so Alex, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right,
here
so
how are you guys?
good. We're joined by Alex Alcala. So he's visiting faculty in Universidad of Los Andes in Colombia. And he's also a Mexican architect. He has his own practice with another friend, Anwar Farah. And thank you for joining us, Alex.
Thank you guys for inviting me, and also I'm very excited to be here. And hi, Curime, really cool to see you. Haven't seen you in a while.
Sure. All right, Jackie, take it away.
Hello. So I'm going to introduce my design. And it's my interpretation of twisted elegance.
There's an echo.
It's an echo.
Go soon.
Can you guys hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm going to speak from the other computer and just mute this one, okay?
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Okay, is that the audio better?
Yes.
Okay. So this is my interpretation of twisted elegance. So I'm gonna just play the video for right now. So continuing, so this project expresses a free-flowing variations. Oh, sorry about that. Let me. Sorry. So this project expresses a free-flowing variations of a dragon's body. The technique-driven masses are shown to adapt to its topographical surroundings, which compares to a snake's nature of the exploration of its underground. It's as if these objects can slither their way around to find refuge. This design strongly emphasizes its scale texture from the dragon, which carries a constant movement to find its true form. Looking closely to the details, as we see right here, we scaled down, I apologize, it's these details. We scaled down to see like the texture of the dragon and its snake-like window mullions. This starts to give a parasitic correlation and intertwines within each other. So these snake-like details consume a part of the wall, ceiling, and structural moments that articulate as these unique columns, which are these details. These serpentine geometries start latching on parasitically, which give organic aesthetics. And then moving on to the furniture. The furniture has fluid components that begin to interfere with the familiar appearance of furniture applications. The conventional desk is consumed by a meandering dragon over the surface. The chair depicts tentacle-like characteristics that may give the illusion of continuity. Like the desk, these designs introduce a balance between conventional and conventional. And that concludes my presentation. I'm open to any comments.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing myself talking here. I'll try to talk through it. I think I'm really into the jewelry-like form or details that you're bringing to the project. I think it shows a lot of sign of delicacy and intricacy and attention to detail, which I think really comes across. What I would challenge you on is maybe leaning into what you're doing here. Can you see what I just drew over? Yeah. So what you're really doing that I feel like is really compelling is the way you're merging some of these forms. If I look at your plan view, you have these forms that are disconnected. And you're talking about serpentine form. I think you have this opportunity to create these spaces by the in between. I mean, I found that really compelling. If you might explore that as an option. Also, I think about your video and how some of the shots really like cinema. And I wonder if we use a voiceover with the video, you would be able to use exposition to explore your narrative. You know. Exposition is a way of telling the audience what this space is about. And I think you're doing that visually. I'm wondering if we had a voiceover audio component that could also assist in that video process. Sorry if that was unclear. It was kind of tough to hear myself talk.
Can you guys still hear the audio interference?
Let's see. No, I think we're good now.
Okay, I think it's because I was sharing the sound.
Yep.
But I think I fixed it. Sorry about that.
I don't know if any of that actually came across or you heard any of that. But does that make sense, Jackie, what I'm thinking about in terms of your project?
Oh, I agree. This just start giving like a jewelry like effect to this type of detail. And yeah, thank you so much for those comments. I would definitely take that into consideration.
Is there a particular reason why you like your exterior is like kind of very black or dark violet, or then like we look at the jewelries, it's kind of like this shiny and reflective materials. But then in the floor plan, you have this kind of really strong kind of like, you know, the classic red, the classic yellow, the classic blue, like kind of like objects there. Is there like a special, is there an idea behind that, or?
So like the topography and the floor and the color of the outside, like the purple and the metallics, it was intended to give a parasitic look. And so it starts kind of latching on to the surfaces right next to each other. And the interior, I introduced a little bit more playful colors due to, I guess, more in communication with the user and the experience that I want them to witness. So if there are more colors that are playful, I feel like the child would be more comfortable with these parasitic geometries. And I guess this also is my intention behind this design, is instead of being scared of, like, you know, kids typically are either scared or invite bugs in their hand or on their palm, you know, they might as well learn about, you know, their characteristics and how they work. And I think that if introduced into these geometries, they would be a little bit more comfortable with bugs and parasites and all those things that we find very gross in a sense.
Okay. I mean, like, so me personally, I have no parasite modeler kind of background or in any way like this, but to me, it feels a little bit like if your intention is to kind of create a feeling of like, kind of like, you know, like good vibes, essentially, right? I'm going to the dragon school, but inside we have like good vibes. Me personally still feels like the interior should be like super badass, kind of like crazy forms as the exterior, but somehow maybe through the use of materials and colors, it just feels much better. Right now, it's just like the way how I read this is you made like amazing furniture. Let's put it this way, you build an amazing shell, and then somehow you kind of rough sketched up the interior, and then again you put in amazing furniture. But somehow like the interior doesn't really like match the furniture and the exterior. This is just like how, like, I look at the railings, and those are like straight like alu pipes, and then like the pink spiral staircase, which seems like an amazing opportunity to create like an amazing stair, is like what you see on every rooftop in downtown LA, kind of like just straight out of the Home Depot, like helicoptered in. So if that's what you want, I feel like the way how you present this project, that needs to be a little bit better explained. Or if that's not what you want, I feel there's a good area to kind of go crazy and bring that up to the same level as like your exterior and some of the furniture. But yeah, I also like this kind of this snake. The snake furniture is cool. Like I like the chair on the left, which is somewhere between a chair and a ring. It's kind of interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to talk about the exterior part and the formal part of the masses, because I think the masses, they have a very strong language in a way that is very articulated by the use of these dragon patterns and snake patterns. And it's very interesting how you can read your masses as several different objects or different parts. And it's I think, and it's a very, very powerful and very strong language. So, but I don't see a very strong connection between the exterior and the interior. As Curime was saying, I don't see the link between the exterior and the interior. How is the relationship between the inside and the outside? And then again, the same thing with the furniture, because the furniture is amazing, and I think you create a very highly detailed objects that are incredibly linked with the furniture and everything. But I would like to hear a little bit more how you will connect all these parts from the exterior to the interior, because I don't see a very clear connection on that.
So
I mean,
would you guys, sorry, recommend maybe like a change in like the color palette and a little bit more, I guess, defining on the edges of like the railings and the stair system?
I don't know, because I think, for example, the floors in the interior are completely flat. So I think there is not like very aggressive moves in the interior in a way to be more speculative, in a way that you connect all the masses from the exterior to the interior and connect with the furniture, perhaps.
I see. Because I did have interior features that kind of connect into like the columns. So these like serpentine geometries start latching on the wall. So I guess maybe I should show that a little bit better in the presentation as well.
I think also thinking more like, I think as architects, we tend to forget about landscape architecture. And I think it would help if you thought more like a landscape architect within the interior, and think of a floor differently, and think of a wall differently, and how that can think about rolling hills and how that can become a floor and a wall simultaneously, right? Also think of your treatment of the ground. I think you have these beautiful, delicate objects that should sit in the ground and nestle with the landscape all in one. Like I'm looking at this one here in particular. Like you just have these beautiful forms just sit on this kind of flat kind of surface, and I think that's a missed opportunity. If we brought some of your language of this kind of like serpentine-like forms into your project, both interior and exterior, I think you would convince a lot of people about what you're trying to do. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how literal we go here, but it seems we're going quite literal, because we're like saying like, hey, this is the dragon school thing. So one way, I mean, none of us has ever seen a dragon or opened a dragon, but there's like certain characteristics which we can think of, right? So they like spit fire. So you could imagine in there must be like the fire chamber, or there must be like the big heart. And then like that could be like maybe some theme on how you can think of like how you could internally tell a story and start detailing how it looks like. Right now it looks like you know, a kindergarten inside of something which looks like a dragon, but it's not a dragon, right? So I encourage you to go all in, and whatever you take as the theme of being a dragon, like it should feel through all images, like through all, it should be clear. This is dragon. This is the dragon school. Yeah, and whichever story or parts you take from that to do this, like you don't have to make a fire chamber, but like somewhere think about it. What are the characteristics which this object should have? And that will also help you then to tell a story at the end and make a film or a movie if you want. So because it's all there, right?
Yeah, thank you guys. I mean, Jackie, I guess what the critics are kind of like questioning is you went to the extent of creating all this, you know, beautiful maneuvers that are giving you this very detailed, and it's giving you like all these qualities in your massing. And then it's kind of like they're questioning the way now that the interior works. And, you know, just like the comment before, like still midterm, right? So it's kind of like, you know, absorbing that and seeing how can you now start, you know, investigating and figuring out how you can incorporate those systems on the interior. So you already started doing it. So I don't know if you can see where I highlighted, right? So that's like kind of like this volumes rupturing on the inside and bursting on the inside, kind of like if, you know, if like you slash something and then like all these snakes come out, right? So you slowly you'll get there, but you know, I guess that for the conformity of the overall 2GAX, trying to do the powers of 10, and you know, we were not able to actually do the animations as we needed to. Then we had to settle for you know, still images, and you know, then the narrative becomes something else, because it's like now we're not just looking at this thing, you know, from the bottom up. Now we're looking at this in different angles. Now we're looking at floors that are flat, right? But if you're just looking at from just the perspective from the bottom up, you know, I mean, the floor was gonna look flat anyways. But I mean, overall, Jackie, I would say awesome work. Super happy with the push, given you know, the constraints that we've been having. Like, I think you managed to come out ahead fantastically, and super excited for the project. So good job. All right.
Yeah, good job.
Kordae, I don't know if you can stay for one more, if you have to head out, but I appreciate you being here, giving us the time. Thank you very much for that. I think we have 2 more projects. And can you stay for one more, or you gotta head out?
I might have to head out, but thank you, William, and thank you to the entire studio. These 2 projects already are giving me a lot to think about in my own practice. So thank you for putting all the time in and the work in, both in the videos as well as the architectural provocations that you all are pushing forward. So thank you all for all the hard work.
Great. Thank you, man. See you soon.
Right. Take care.
Bye.
See you.
All right. Okay, so we have our other guest. She's just, hi, Leah.
Had to do the customary unmute. Hey, how's it going?
Good, just in time. So we have 2 more projects. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
So Leah, she's also faculty at SciArt. I can't remember what is that you're teaching, Leah.
I'm teaching 1A, so first year.
Yeah. 1A, yeah. And she's also the fellow at Taliesin, right?
Yep, yeah, correct.
Okay, all right. So glad to have you here. Just, you know, 2 more projects. So Patrick, take it away.
Hi, my name is Patrick.
Hey, Patrick.
I'm going to play my video and then talk because I have a lot of background noise in it. All right. So my series of classrooms and furniture are designed around the form of the traditional Chinese architectural ornament, the guardian lion. I began with designing the chair, which morphs the seat and arms of the Tulip Chair by Euro Saarinen into the lion, which supports the back and bottom of the chair. The Tulip Chair, which is originally designed as a fiberglass shell, is modeled into a monolithic form. The table is designed to be also stone with metal legs. The design decision to use mainly stone introduces the theme of juxtaposition, which appears in different ways in other parts of the project. These pieces of furniture appear heavy, but are light and flexible in the sense that they may be arranged in multiple variations depending on the mode of learning. The table may be pushed closely to the chair to allow for a tight lecture configuration, or the furniture pieces may be more spread out and serve well for a lounge-like layout. The floor plan also separates the overall classroom into different spaces for learning. By the entry of the classroom, there is space for a 6 to 8 person group to meet. In one corner, there's a large conversation pit, which allows students to lounge or mingle with others comfortably. In the other corner, up a couple steps, is a small reading room meant for quiet work. These separate spaces help cut down on noise and distractions for the students. The windows and doors are inspired by traditional circular Chinese architectural elements that complement the curvature of the form of the lion. Juxtaposition appears again with the contrast between bright and colorful interior against the sophisticated dark gray stone and gold mullions on the exterior. The overall form of classrooms emphasizes the natural form and textures of the lion. This repetition also appears in the surrounding landscape. The orientation of the forms creates a landscape that varies between the classrooms. The masses stick out of the subtraction and appear as floating islands, mimicking little chunks of landscapes that stick out of riverbeds, similar to some parts of the LA River, which backs up to the site. In some parts of the LA River, it's becoming a little bit more green. I don't know if I could maybe share really quickly. But that was kind of the inspiration to have these island-like forms. Can't find, similar to this. But that is all.
So I guess I'm just curious because I'm kind of brand new and I didn't fully get the intro, even though I read the syllabus. Like, how did you start with this? Just out of curiosity.
So I started with this lion creature, and I created this chair and this table, and then from there created the overall form for the classroom, and then which created the exterior forms as well.
I think there's something really funny, especially because when you played your video, I mean, I'm just like talking about like cinematically, but like in terms of the overlay, I automatically was just like thinking about all the ways that the students would fuss this up. But yet like this view was always like, it was always stagnant. It was just like, I had to like imagine that in, but then these views where it's like knocked over, it's kind of like building in a question of failure. Especially because even though you say like, it looks like it's really heavy, but it's really not, it's very light. So I think eventually it will become kind of like a material texture thing where it's like you apply like either fake marble or something. So it registers as kind of like the faux of it. Because I think what's really hilarious is that you would never want these around children as they're now, you know, because it's actually like terrifying, but in a way that's like actually really funny because, you know, the lion is on its side. Like it's never, like you can imagine all the positions that are wrong and they're all so right. It's really good. But I guess there's a few questions I think that like we can unpack, and I kind of, because in the end this is supposed to be a school that also kind of has ideas of ventilation and right, and has like ideas of like how it relates to the landscape and outdoors, correct? So I think for me, it's kind of weird that it still maintains the same relationship outdoors, even though you're kind of in theory clustering it either next to or in relationship or kind of like in conversation with the LA River, that it's kind of weird that the lion kind of sampling and kipashing still holds versus becomes entirely different, or maybe it has something to do with the floor plane kind of continuing out and connecting these versus kind of like just the formal massing of it. Because that's to me like the one thing that I think it more so has to do with how the interior relationships kind of expand outwards, and even so how some of these, which are really cool because they look vacuum formed, like the windows, but how they can also start to peel back in like an Oculus type fashion, the way you have even the stepping, like how these all these moves kind of relate to each other in terms of like, because it is, you know, totally want some natural ventilation coming through, you know, so that's being like, yeah, very realistic. But it's cool. Yeah, I like the vacuum form windows. It's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, the vacuum forming glass is definitely cool. I overall think actually this lion gives you like a pretty awesome surface texture. Like if you look at the building and you think of like having such a building would be quite amazing.
Yep.
I agree with Leah that like when we look at your presentation, the last 3 images, or let's say the last 2, they don't really tell more from each other. It's pretty much the same image. And so it would be interesting if you maybe showed 2 of these components and how they relate to each other to like some sort of an exterior space which could connect them. So that might be like something to think of for your final presentation, but also like something to work on. I do really like that in your case, we see some treatment of the floor. And we can see it immediately like makes the feel, even though this is not a fully realistic project, it starts to feel much more like this is actually something which has been like thought through like one step further. So I do like this kind of circles which is stamped in, or just little steps up, and it definitely like now also makes it, it's less of a hall. It now has like dedicated areas because of that. I'm not sure if the inner circle, if you're like fully taking advantage of it, it seems like where you have it flat, like in the circle, you have all the furniture, which one would imagine where it's flat. And then in the flat, there's nothing, kind of. So maybe there's also a chance to kind of work a narrative out and like use that to kind of place your furniture in a way. Maybe a little bit less about the project itself, but more something I noticed is like you have paper thin shells. So I'm not sure if that's supposed to be, but I look at some of your colleagues and they have actual wall thicknesses and things, etc. in there, which also I think actually is going to help to kind of draw these spaces and define them and this kind of relationship. Right now, it's all kind of aligned. I mean, I see you picking it up a little bit, but it needs a lot of zoom. And then, yeah, and I do really like the color palette of the exterior. Like this green, gold, black is pretty sleek. I wonder, do you have any ideas to like if we look at the furniture and the interior, they're all like this kind of one, as if they were casted, or have you any ideas of like want to add like another texture to it, or is that like how you want it, like this kind of not taking any reflection, kind of like very muted material?
I mean, yeah, I think, sorry. I think the material of the chair and the table could definitely be developed a little bit more. Like Leah said, maybe give it a little bit more of a marble texture or something so it's not so flat, because right now, I think the only part that's allowing it to be red, maybe as stone, is just the color. And so I think I need to emphasize that a little bit more.
Yeah. And also just curious, how close is this project to the LA River?
I think the back of the site backs up to it.
I mean, because you could just make a claim for hinging out on, you know, because why not, you know, if you can, like, just, I would say do it, you know, because yeah, I think that would really up the project. And I think I would also maybe look at, I mean, there's a lot of other, you know, kind of architectural projects that do the stepping on the inside. But in terms of, I think, a really playful space that has maybe two different ways of, you know, navigating around, I would definitely look at Sana's Rolex Center in terms of like, because, I mean, the stepping is different, but in terms of like definitely kind of like spatially mediating the space as you kind of walk along and through section, but there's also pathways that carve along. So you can have people studying, but also, and like in a quiet versus loud space. So there's ways of designated space through pathways as well as through like cavities that I think could also hint to as you expand outwards versus kind of continue the same formal logic. I think there could be something there. So it's definitely, and I'll put it in the chat. But yeah, but basically they, in kind of like in the places where there's like knolls, they have pathways, alternative pathways around, which I could imagine for children would be fun in terms of just like experientially, but also in the age of social distancing, you know, where we have to think about separation and kind of like maybe multiple ways of experiencing things in the same space, which I think you start to hint at in terms of negotiating sound in the way one person relates to another, relates to a group really well. But yeah, I would say I think it'd be cool to just cluster it near the LA River, you know, and have a direct relationship to that, especially because as you move out, you kind of cast everything in porcelain, even though it's concrete, right? Or it's marble in the case of the inside. So yeah, I would say make a case for actually starting to develop that in relationship to the context. And I think like Curime said, like think about how these actually connect, because it's weirdly enough, I'm gonna annotate, right? There's like some, as you showed, the nozzles that cut through, which I want to hear more about because you just have them there, but they're not shown anywhere on the exterior, but they seem to relate to what's maybe going on in here, potentially. They pick up on some of like the regulating lines of it. And then, yeah, like the thickness obviously is a thing, but like we can work on that. We get it. But yeah, I want to hear more about what's going on with these also.
Yeah, those I just modeled as like circular bookshelves, just to go along with the curvature of the furniture in the interior.
Yeah, and I think it could, you know, amp up the project. You know, it depends on how realistic you want to get by also thinking about how, you know, things peel away and let air in also, you know, into this enclosure. Right. As also as like how this floor plane, you know, either divots or deviates and works its way out, either through these sorts of weird pathways or, you know, because I think we have to understand how to get from like also point A to point B eventually and how programmatically they relate. Because I think within the clusters, you kind of made a strong case, but it's kind of like a little, you know, this is like one classroom where we can imagine all sorts of different experiences when it's like, well, what's going on in the rest of the school, you know? I guess that will be your next step, but, you know, obviously. But yeah, I think to work its way out would be, I'm really intrigued to see that.
I mean,
also, are these pillows?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I modeled those as pillows.
Okay, that's funny. That's hilarious, actually. Yeah, to see that would be cool to see those, like, also, I mean, this is like weird, but to just like compress a few of those would be really fun. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Curime, for the comments. Definitely, Leah. I don't think you know, we can tie it back just for the premise and in which set the studio, and also there's like a lot of train tracks behind it, so it's not like directly adjacent. There's like, you know, there's like a chunk of land. But you know, but the river is like right behind. It's not like one Santa Fe to the river. It's more of like if we were at, you know, I would say at the building next to SIAC and then the river.
Got it. And then LA River. So you have descents and barbed wire in between.
Yeah, exactly. But
Okay.
I think that you touch up on something really exciting, and it's this new geometry that he generated on the interior. That what's the potential that can have versus like either the pillows or this tubes that for me, I don't know. I was thinking that this was like little things where kids go on timeout. So whenever
hide in the wall.
Yeah. Go there, read a book, you're on timeout. I thought it was something like that. But also like think about it in a way in which like you can start creating kind of like a network of these things. And that's how like kids, they enter the classroom, they crawl through it. Imagine how fun something like that would be. And again,
and it could be a reading nook even.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and it's something that I tell my students is like, the only limits to what they're able to produce is their imagination, right? So, they're in school. Sometimes we throw them and we ask them to, design these things. And there's always, you have to put like your own twist to it. And I think, Patrick, you're really onto something. First time I'm seeing the pillows, and I think those could be really fun. And also this little cubbies that you have created, I think that that has a something you're working on something that can be developed into something quite special on the interior. Thank you, Patrick, for the work, and thank you, the critics, for the comments. Leah, sorry that I didn't introduce. It's just that I did this 5 times, and it's like I forgot when you got in. So
no, I mean I read it, so I wasn't sure, but I just wanted to like make sure.
I don't know the brief, and it's simple. So they started with different figurines, and not figurines. We call them creatures. So in this case, it was the lion. And then the idea of the studio is like, how do you take the ready-made and you start hybridizing that to start generating furniture. So they started with the furniture, and then from the furniture, they started with the chair. Then from the chair, they went to the desk. Then from the desk, they went to the classroom and ground. So that's kind of like where they are right now. And the hopes is that they're able to develop the entire school based on this method of working. Each student is at a different stage, I believe, but most of them are doing pretty well. Cool. All right.
Thank you for the comment.
Yes, and that I would be kind of Patrick. It's a little bit maybe that's like the case because you had to do like one table, one chair, but because you're kind of clustering and kit bashing them. But I would be also would say it would kind of make sense that you would have a couch that was kit bashed in the same fashion, so that there would be kind of varieties of different furnitures versus kind of just like a singular chair with a singular lion. But you can kind of have weird craftings of space around that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Last one, Ahmed.
Hi. Let me share my screen. I'll share the video. That's how it works. Thank you. Let me show you guys my renders. Sorry, stand stop. Hi everyone. So, like you guys have heard, my name is Ahmed, and today I'm presenting my series of classrooms. My project is called The Drool. So Drool, to experience the unseen, the medium, spaces that are generally experienced through distorted figures, create a form that transcends the original object by simply stretching and molding it to experience the middle or the unseen. As I started exploring several techniques to stretch and mold the form to create a drool-like effect, the object naturally translated to a series of forms that are partially distorted in a technique that allows the kids to familiarize themselves with the object, but before introduced to the drool. So the idea of having this blurred line between the familiar that is distorted by the drool and creating this sort of familiar, unfamiliar object. So you can kind of see the contrast between what is considered the traditional classroom versus what we're doing. And so this comes into my furniture. So in terms of the furniture, which are the close-ups, the chair seemingly familiar from the top, but as you approach the pace, you are met with a distorted figure that unfamiliarizes the original object. When I found that there is always, when you distort the drool, you can find that there's a transition between the original object, which is the species that we're using, and the practice that I'm doing by stretching and molding. And that's something that I was looking into in terms of that transition or the unseen. Although generated in the distortion between the familiar and the unfamiliar, it creates its own distinct features. Features that can only be explored through the transitional space done by the drool. The drool creates a fluid-like quality that contains the distortion textures of the object and the uncontrolled motion appearance of the drool. The merge creates the distinct features of the drool that its definition can only be produced through the posture and the fluidity of the drool, perfectly imitating the chair's posture by drooling fluid-like texture, sort of like it's defined on the top and then drooling downward. And in terms, as I went through the rooms, you can kind of see the top view. I kind of always, I kind of wanted to also have this juxtaposition between the familiar and the unfamiliar, but also take in mind the idea of the drool. And you can kind of see that in terms of the floor plan. You have some of these species that are coming outward or bubbling out from the floor or drooling outward, creating spaces that can be used structurally. So I said, it starts by designing the rooms. I wanted to look through the different features to introduce the drool, but keep in mind the idea of designing spaces that are blurred the line between the familiar and the unfamiliar. Spaces that are generated by exploring and experimenting with the posture and introducing subtle moments where the drool could elongate the form to stretch and to reach the other rooms. Also, by repeating the same practice, creating different moments where the form can reach out to the landscape, creating entry gates, communal connections, and finally extending to the site. The shell of the form also plays a vital role in designing the features that the visitor is familiar to. The spherical shapes juxtaposition the clusteral formal shell. In addition to the ordinary features of the classrooms that can be also seen from the shell and the interior, the room to connect to the familiar with the unfamiliar. Features like the doors and the windows can be seen alongside the edge, serving a dual purpose as a functional piece, but also a contrast to the shell of the structure. Finally, the linear organization of the rooms also contrasts the site by having a more or less familiar approach to the classroom layout with a fluid-like fabric that organizes the different classrooms. So these are different classrooms that I have. That's an exterior of the one that I was showing of the interior. And those are the different variations. And that's the fabric-like site. This sort of suggests a street-like form that then translates from the site to the street and back to the site, sort of influencing the site as well. And these are just like close-ups of the rooms. And yeah, that should be everything. Thank you.
So what was the initial idea? Your classrooms are informing the ground or the ground are informing the classrooms?
The initial idea was that sort of the floor is informing the ground of the classroom. So you have this drool that comes from the chair, and that's how I started. And so you have this posture that is defined, much like sort of like the site. And then as you go vertically, or I guess in this case, it is vertical, it's less defined. And that comes with the sort of the species that are coming outwards and also the ground itself. So I'm not sure if that, yeah.
How do the students familiarize themselves with the drool as they experience it on, say, like a building or furniture scale?
So when you, for instance, the scale, in terms of the furniture piece, the top is more or less a regular shape. So it is something that they're familiar to in terms of like a regular seating. But then as you sort of approach, even at a smaller scale, like the furniture, you can only see the drool in the bottom piece. So it's not necessarily the first thing that you see, but the closer that you get, the more that you see of it. Actually, like you can see in views like this. So it's kind of, it plays like the idea of like slowly transitioning them from something that's ordinary to a little bit more complex or disordinary, I guess.
And then these, I'm just trying to understand, because I do want to know where this exists in this. And then these, similar to the last one, are these kind of like classrooms, and then they kind of like, in theory, kind of cluster together in this landscape form?
Yes, so in terms of your first question, I would like to annotate.
Sorry, I've been working with first year, so that's automatically what.
So in terms of this should be here. I know that the glass, this is supposed to be glass, but it's a bit darker. So that's where that is. In terms of the other classrooms, yes. So this is the more defined shape or the defined classrooms, and the other ones are cluster variations of different modules of the form itself, but kind of plays with the same idea of having the drool in connections like this, where this sort of extend from one form to another.
Because I think the one thing for me that seems missing is the leap between these two, which I think was like very clear from the other one when we had kind of the cutaway. Because I think as you progress this forward, what will be really key is kind of like organization of like either kind of the classroom space as it relates obviously to exterior space, as it relates to the school overall. Because I think it's a really kind of fun way of thinking about learning, but I think it's kind of putting too much on the objects themselves versus your kind of empowerment as an architect to actually start to lay out that spatial arrangement, right? Because we have just a clustering, which for the students is they could either see it as a maze that they want to work with, a disorganization, but I would say you would need to push how either the objects start to stabilize or do they not? Like, do they have proper places where they go? Like what drool relates to what solid object, and how do we start to understand that as either as the teacher or as the student? Like, I think these things are really clear or need to be a lot clearer, but and then, yeah, I think continuing that thought outwards. Because for me, yeah, I think the drool is kind of used as a metaphor that I think you still, in a lot of ways, need to figure out how it helps you push the organization of this classroom.
Yeah. I made a comment like this before to one of your colleagues about presentation. I think in your case, the story and the images don't really match up at this point. And it probably has to do with what Leah just was saying, that somewhat the connecting piece between these two things are missing. But then I also think a good thing for you to look at is actually your colleague just before, when we look at the images with the table, with the roundabout, where he uses the camera angle and some sort of familiar objects to kind of help us understand the space. And when we look at your images on the left, which are, I assume, somewhere in the interior, it's really hard for me to situate myself in there and understand on how this is supposed to work. So it's very abstract, the two ones on the left. So it's almost no information at that point. So I would really encourage you to think about that. What are you trying to communicate in these images? I do very like the colors you choose, and also like how all these kind of classrooms are kind of nestled together. I'm not really sure how it would work as a compound, like how you would connect between the ones. But I think as objects themselves, they're very beautiful, and the colors and also like kind of almost like paint which is being dripped and kind of onto the gray and a little bit into the black. Like I really like that. And I think it has a lot of like qualities which you could kind of look into and maybe bring to the interior. But the interior space to me is very mysterious at this point. It feels more like kind of like a little bit less out of the realm of architecture, more of this kind of like, you know, like when you go into the field of media arts and they have like some of these dreamscape type of images or animations where there isn't really always the goal to make complete coherent sense. You see images like this, but in your case, you're trying to tell us how this space is supposed to work. And I don't think these images really are helpful in this way.
And part of that, Curime, is like, it's like as if you were to get a still of a food fight, and you don't know from this where in the food fight you were, right? Like, I don't know if this is how the classroom begins or how it ends, right?
Yeah, or if it's, yeah, or if, yeah, no, I mean, I really don't know. Like everything seems floating in space, like on the interior. Like the bottom left image is like, I have no idea how that's supposed to be like in space. And if you have one image like that, and then you have maybe another one, which is kind of gives me a little bit of an aha moment, that might be okay. But there is no aha, really. I mean, in the floor plan, I understand, like the third image, like second top to the left, I can imagine this is kind of like an assemblage of objects, but then I have no idea how this relates to the boundaries of the space, because that's what you crop out, and then you crop right to the complete object. Yeah. So I can't use any of my experience, which over the years, like all the conventions of drawing floor plans and sections and all these things to cobble this together. So we really, like, this is really like something you need to look at. It's like how you let people access what you're thinking here. But again, I think this green, black, gray objects are beautiful, and I would love to know how they work.
Yeah, and I think there's something to the texturing of them, kind of at the larger spatial external scale that you have. Yeah, again, that is kind of the hard leap, is we never contextualize between the two, right? We kind of just go from this immediately, we're at the scale of basically what I assume is the entire project. But I think there's a lot that can be pushed, and a lot of things in terms of like, yeah, whether it's matte versus shiny, just like the texturing along with these things. But for me, I think the drool kind of lets you too loose. Like, I think it's a good metaphor, but I think you need to know how to structure it, right? Like, to some extent, it's like, well, what is the drool other than a drape, you know? And when, like, and what material is that? I think it's kind of, it's interesting because for one, at this point, you mash up the kit bashing in the drool. They're one, right? And that's at the furniture scale. At the building scale, you have the kit bash, and then you have the drool, right? And that's what is contextualizing it, as if I was just dropping it in. But I think if you think about it as something that requires actual structuring, whether the drool then folds over these and becomes something that becomes like a floor plate, right? That has kind of structure to hold on to, and maybe students can bounce on it, who knows? You know, it's really up to you to decide. But I think you need to structure it in your mind a little bit more as something that you can use organizationally. And then I think going back and forth between the drape and the drool as kind of like an operational way of working would be really helpful for you. And also it makes it materially specific in a way that, like, you don't need that, but it might allow you to kind of rank the logic of the drool in a way that I don't think you're doing right now.
Yeah, so Ahmed, I think that you know, some of the comments are spot on in the sense of that, you know, we constructed this idea based on how you tackle the chair. And in the chair, in the chair, there's a sense of like this droopiness. So I don't think the drool becomes a drape. It's more of like a droopiness in the form, and that's evident in the chair. But because the chair is like upside down, then we don't see the droopiness. We see it up, jumping at us. And then also the fact that your plan views, you know, it's the powers of 10, right? So we're looking from the bottom up. We don't see the droop. We see these things that look like columns, right? So I think that those all are fair comments. I think that I really buy in the story. I like the story. I think that now it's about how does the images, how does the work moving forward relates to what you are describing, because you are describing all these beautiful moments that are really difficult to perceive, especially in the views that you're showing us. Something that, you know, for example, that I like when I look at, you know, that center image, the third one in the first row, is like, we talk about the drool, and I was just imagining like a kid like drooling on the table, and then creates this pot, and then he starts playing with it, going like this,
all over it,
creating, you know, this landscape. So all this imagery came to my mind. So the power is there. You got all the tools. Now I think you have to use that element, and how do you translate to the different maneuvers that you're creating on your interior to, you know, convey this type of feeling. Also, I think Curime has a great point. You know, that second image on the top, first row, it's difficult to understand the boundaries of that. So, you know, that could be endless. That could be, you know, very short. So to understand the scale of it, it's very complicated. If at least if we don't even see like let's say, I guess we see it a little bit on the bottom on the green, like the definition of like where the floor ends. But I mean, I think those are, you know, good questions to have moving forward. But I think at the stage that you are right now, the project is working really well, and, you know, we have to, you know, keep going. I appreciate the effort and putting all this together, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for the comments.
All right. Okay, my critics, Alex, Curime, Leah, thank you so much for sticking with us and joining us. Hernan joined us for a little bit, and please say hi to all of you. And that's it. Thanks, Curime. Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Leah. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Lots of potential. Good luck, second half.
Curime, you have them on Monday, so just, you know, you already know. They are co-workers. Just, you know, show them everything at once and send them a robot to their house.
Get some sleep. There won't be sleep next week. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh
my
God. There will be plenty of sleep. There will be plenty of sleep.
Okay, happy Halloween, everyone. Congrats on that.
Bye, take care.
See you. Bye.
All right, my guys, stick around. Let me see how thank you, Alex. Thanks for coming up. Say hello to Anwar.
Bye, Alejandro. Bye, Leah. Bye, everybody. Thanks, William.
All right.